Yo, what's up guys? Del Boy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So a quick preview and prediction for Terence Crawford versus Kell Brook. This fight has now been officially confirmed and it goes down on the 14th of November and it takes place in the bubble at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Obviously, this fight is for the WBO welterweight title, which is held by Terence Crawford. My initial reaction to the actual fight announcement, it wasn't the fight that was on the tip of everyone's tongues, but at the same time, arguably Kell Brook is the best realistic option for Terence Crawford right now, so I've got no real problem with this fight. But let's briefly run through the tale of the tape. We shall start with the champion Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford has a perfect record of 36-0, 27 of those 36 wins coming by way of knockout. Kell Brook has a record of 39 wins, 2 defeats, 27 of those 39 wins coming by way of knockout. Terence Crawford is listed as 5'8" with a 74-inch reach, whereas Kell Brook is listed as 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. So while Kell Brook is an inch taller, Terence Crawford has a significant reach advantage of 5 inches. Terence Crawford is 33 years old, Kell Brook is 34 years old. Both guys are a similar age, but in terms of miles on the clock, Terence Crawford is certainly the fresher of the two. And Terence Crawford, while he's naturally an orthodox fighter, he does have the ability to fight out of the southpaw stance to a pretty good level, to be honest. He is what you would call a switch hitter, I guess. And obviously Kell Brook is an orthodox fighter. So now we have the tail of the tape out of the way. Where do we start? I guess we start with a negative, the elephant in the room. And that is, what version of Kell Brook are we going to get in this fight? It's worth mentioning that Kell Brook has not made welterweight since May 2017. That was of course his fight with Errol Spence Jr. in which he lost by a late stoppage. And even back then, there was talk of Kell Brook severely struggling to make weight. Kell Brook has always been a big welterweight, and he's always been a guy who doesn't really live the life outside of a ring. And of course, on top of that, he fought at 160 to fight Gennady Golovkin, then he went all the way back down to 147 to fight Errol Spence Jr. And the theories were at the time that that wasn't good for Kell Brook. Here we are 3 years later, once again Kell Brook is going back down to welterweight. So how healthy can we realistically expect Kell Brook? Is he going to successfully make weight without draining himself? That has to be mentioned as a big factor in this fight, to be honest. Like I said, even back in the day when Kell Brook was at welterweight, Team Brook, Eddie Hearn and the likes, they were on record in saying that welterweight wasn't easy to make, and that was 3 and a bit years ago. So, now theoretically, it could be even harder, so we'll see what happens with that. I guess we can only hope that Kell Brook has a world-class nutritionist on board to help him drain down to 147 without being too depleted. Another factor, or red flag in regards to Kell Brook, is the fact that Dominic Ingle is not going to be training him for this fight, and he's not going out to America to take the corner. That's interesting to me. Obviously, Kell Brook has been a long-time Ingle fighter, since he was a child, basically. So for Dominic Ingle not to be there with Kell Brook, to me is a bit of a red flag. We saw what happened last time Kell Brook left Dominic Ingle when he fought Michael Zarafa. Kell Brook in that fight looked very average in my opinion, and at times he was struggling. So yeah, I wonder who's going to take the corner for Kell Brook going into this fight. We do have to be aware that there are red flags in regards to Kell Brook going into this fight. But stylistically, can Kell Brook pose Terence Crawford any real problems? I will say, if this was like a prime Kell Brook and we got one last version of Kell Brook at his best for one night, I do believe he would give Terence Crawford problems. Kell Brook just really needs to fight his fight. He's not going to change his style at this late stage now, so Kell Brook needs to do what he does best, and that is control the distance, maintain those straight punches, and look for the counter shots. Kell Brook is a very astute counterpuncher on the outside and at mid-range, in my opinion. And Terence Crawford, stylistically, he does leave openings for a good straight puncher to capitalise on. And, Terence Crawford, for as good as he is, one aspect of Terence Crawford that I've always found to be overrated is his defence. People act like Terence Crawford doesn't get hit. He does. And Kell Brook really needs to be focusing on those straight punches. Terence Crawford, especially from the southpaw stance, when he opens up and throws combinations, he's actually quite wide with his stance. And when he throws combinations, a lot of the time, Terence Crawford is throwing wider shots, not straight punches. So a good accurate straight puncher who's quick, if he can time Terence Crawford in between his punches, I think he can have success. And that's what Kell Brook really needs to look out for in this fight. He needs to plot his attacks and basically punch with Terence Crawford when Terence Crawford is exchanging, throwing combinations. That's where Kell Brook really needs to be on the lookout. Can Kell Brook win a boxing match at this stage? I don't think so. I don't think he's got the energy to do so for 12 rounds, especially at 147. While Kell Brook does have a great jab, I don't think it's enough to outbox Terence Crawford. Kell Brook's jab, as good as it is fairly one-dimensional. And yeah, I just don't see Kell Brook maintaining range for 12 rounds and outboxing Terence. I think Terence will have far too much energy, far too much activity, and also, even if Kell Brook starts the fight that way and he's having success boxing, Terence Crawford is a good adjuster, in my opinion. He'll switch up the tactics and try something else if something isn't working. You know, we've seen that in a few fights from Terence Crawford. One fight that springs to mind is the Gamboa fight, where Gamboa was basically outboxing Crawford early on. Crawford was trying to box with him, which was a mistake. He realised that, and all of a sudden he decided to apply more pressure, make the most of his size advantage, and really he beat up Gamboa after that. So Terence, even if Kell has a good start, Terence is going to find a way to adjust and try something out. So yeah, for me, Kell Brook, his best chance in this fight is a puncher's chance. I think Terence Crawford can be hurt. I think he can be hit. Is Kell Brook the guy to expose that? More than likely no, but in my opinion, that is his best chance, to catch Terence while Terence is punching, and he needs to make it count. He needs to catch Terence with something big, in my opinion, to win this fight. As far as I'm concerned, Kell needs to win by knockout. He needs to play the counter-puncher, and when the opportunities arise, he needs to do his best to take advantage of those and hurt Terence Crawford. Like I said, I do believe Terence can be hurt. Gamboa hurt him, who is a much smaller man. In his last fight, Terence Crawford, he actually got dropped by Aegis Kavalauskas. Now, it wasn't counted, but that was a BS call. That was clearly a knockdown. And Terence was getting caught in that fight, and he got buzzed a couple of times. So who knows? If Kell Brook could time that perfect straight right hand, stranger things have happened in boxing. But, yeah, that's the extent of Kell Brook's chances, in my opinion. He needs to land that perfect counter shot. Whether he can do it or not, we'll see. As for Terence Crawford, I would avoid going southpaw in this fight, to be honest. Reduce the effectiveness of Kell Brook's right hand. Keep your hands up. Utilise that reach advantage. Use that jab. Keep Kell Brook on the outside of your shots for the first few rounds. And as Kell Brook starts to tire, which I assume he will do at 147, then go through the gears, apply the pressure, work the body of Kell Brook, and then basically try to drown Kell Brook in the second half of this fight. And yeah, so for me with Crawford, just box safe in the first 6 rounds, use that jab, counter when you can, let go of your shots when you can, but don't take too many risks. Don't get too over-exuberant in the first 6-7 rounds. After that, like I said, I think Kell Brook will start to tire due to the weight cut. Brook's stamina at the best of times hasn't been the greatest, so yeah, in the second half of this fight, I'm expecting Crawford to apply the pressure, get a bit more aggressive, work that body. Crawford's actually a really good body puncher when he commits to it, and if he does that in the second half of this fight, I can easily see him getting a stoppage, which in my opinion is a very likely outcome in this fight. So yeah, going into this fight, if I was a Kell Brook fan, I would be going into this fight with pure hope that Kell Brook can have one more night at his best. If he does, if he can, I think this is going to be a very good fight. I just can't count on that. From what we've seen of Kell Brook in recent years, there's nothing there to indicate that he can beat someone like Terence Crawford at 147. You know, there's nothing we've seen to suggest that he can even make the weight in a relatively healthy manner. So, yeah, I mean, for me, Terence Crawford wins this fight, either by late stoppage or a wide points verdict. I'm leaning towards stoppage, but I'm not entirely sure, but I'm certain that Terence Crawford's going to win this one. You know, for me, Terence Crawford is just too fresh, he's too strong at the weight, and just all around a better, more versatile fighter than Kell Brooks. So yeah, I've got Terence Crawford winning this one, either by a late stoppage or a wide points verdict. Anyway, share your thoughts below. Do you believe that Kell Brook can spring the upset? Or like me, are you going with the resounding favourite, Terence Crawford? Share your thoughts below. Peace.